Thanks a lot, Patrick. I'm really happy to be here today with you for two reasons. The first one is that I studied in Bolzano some years ago now, so I'm always happy when I can come back to Bolzano. And the second reason is that I have the chance and the opportunity today to shed some light about some news and some big changes that are happening in Europe and also beyond Europe. So the ultimate reason why I'm here today, that's the same one that brought you here probably. So we know that data is really important for our companies to stay competitive in order to create new services, to improve our processes, and to create innovation. But there's a big challenge that we are all trying to solve. That data availability is kind of limited. We're all working to make this number get lower. This is just related to industrial data, but similar situations, of course, are in different domains. And the reasons can be brought to two main reasons. The first one is a lack of interoperability, but the second one is also that companies are a bit reluctant to share data. So if you're not sure how the data will be used, especially if it's sensible data, why sharing it, right? So what we want to achieve is finding a balance between interoperability and data sharing, but also ownership of the data. So letting the data provider maintain control over what's happening with the data. And that's what we call data sovereignty. So the ability of a data provider, of a legal entity, to maintain control over data and to make the most out of it, so really use it as an economic asset. And this is becoming more and more crucial because if we look at the data economy as it's changing, we see that we're moving from a bilateral data sharing to, we can see it here, oh, 1 second, yeah, to closed communities, but we are now entering a new phase where we want to enable an easier, decentralized, many-to-many data sharing relationships. And this is indeed the focus of this new paradigm of data sharing that I would like to give some visibility today. That's what we call data space. So a data space relies on a federated data infrastructure, so we leave the data where it is, but what we want to ensure is an easier interoperability, and we want to ensure an ecosystem of trust. So we want to ensure traceability, being sure to identify all the participants, and also maintain control over how the data is used. To make it a bit more concrete, I added this slide here. This is, in concrete, what a data space for Industry 4.0 looks like. You can see different endpoints, different machines and companies, different clouds, data marketplaces, platforms that are able to exchange data in an easy way and with some policies for control attached to them. So when you think about a data space, you should always think about basically the sum of all the different endpoints that are able to exchange data in this ecosystem of trust. And I just mentioned this concept of usage control, what we mean with that. This is actually an extension of the usual access control. So not just granting access to someone that wants to use data, but also being able to attach some policies so that, for example, you can decide the data must be deleted after 3 days, or the data can only be used during weekends, and you are able to enforce it technically, but also make these policies valid from a legal perspective. So what we want in the end is to really have a standard, have a way where you decide to plug in or not, and to do that in a safe environment. Of course, there are different standards, but we need something that is a bit more specialized in these new aspects that are really new. And we want a standard that is not related to any specific technologies. We just want some guidelines that anyone can implement. And we want this standard to be open and of course, not related to a specific domain. So what we need is really also cross-domain interoperability. And this is why International Data Spaces Association has been created. You can see it's grown a lot in the past 6-7 years. We currently have 140 members belonging from 28 countries. And all these companies that you see here, they support the co-creation of the standard. The standard is, as mentioned, open, so anyone can use it. We are working together with industry, so we have several projects that are implementing the standard, and we want a feedback loop to, of course, improve the standard on and on. We are also collaborating with lots of other initiatives at European, but also at global level. And we're currently also working really heavily to make this IDS standard an official standard. So we are working on different streams, so to say. The IDS standard is already a DIN specification in Germany, but we're also working with W3C, just to mention one. Before closing, I would like to mention 2 more topics very quickly. The first one is, what's the current state? So really interesting, but can I use it? And the second one is what Patrick mentioned, how this relies to the European strategy. The IDS standard is an open standard. We are trying to document all the implementations that are out there. Right now, you can see this is actually a tool on our website. We've documented more than 100 cases. Of course, they have different maturity levels, and they belong to different domains. So just to guide you through it, we have some cases in lead-in or concept phase, but we also have some pilots and some live data spaces. And here you will see some bilateral cases. For example, we have one case that Volkswagen developed together with ThyssenKrupp and Fraunhofer in Germany, dealing with exchange of sensitive data related to production. But we also have really big data spaces, especially in Germany, because that's where everything generated. But we're also expanding outside Europe. And for example, we are really well connected to Japan, and they're really following closely the concept of data spaces. One example that I wanted to bring here, just to trigger a bit the topic, is an example of a data space for mobility. This is a German project, but of course they have the ambition to expand as well. And from this slide, you can see the amount of partners that are dealing with this data space. This is in pilot phase, so there's an infrastructure that the partners are using, and they have different use cases. You can see we have all the big players from automotive, and this is actually happening in different domains. Another example, you can check it on the radar, is the Catena X project. This is also pretty famous, probably several of you already heard about it. We have there all the big players in the automotive domain and all the big software companies developing a data space for the automotive industry. And this is the last point. So what's the position of data spaces in the European strategy for data? The European Commission started following the concept of data spaces some years ago. You can see here 2 quotations from 2020, where the European Commission stated an interest in creating a legislative framework for data spaces, but also making some funds available to support the creation of data spaces. And what's the current state? We're actually there, so we have some regulations, we have lots of investment, and new projects have started. One in particular, you can see it from this other slide here, is this Data Spaces Support Center. This is a big project that is bringing together the whole community and the experts of data spaces, not just in the consortium, but also as associate partners. So the goal of the Data Spaces Support Center is to facilitate and harmonization of all the different frameworks and technologies available. And of course, IDSA has a big role in this community because it's bringing a lot of experience from the past years and a standard that is now moving from a research environment to market-ready solutions. But you can see from this slide, a lot is happening right now. So I try to give you an idea with some logos from our partners in Japan. So you see here the Robot Revolution and Industrial IoT Initiative. We're really close with them. I reported here in top part some of the other forerunners in the topic of data spaces. Most of you probably heard about GaiaX. They also have lots of visibility and lots of partners. We're working really closely with them as well. You also see here some other technologies that are contributing to data spaces from different angles. And the goal of these Data Spaces Support Center is indeed to harmonize all these different frameworks and technologies. And in the bottom here, you see some of the big players, the Mobility Data Space that I showed earlier, the Catena-X that I also mentioned. And this is actually another project that you might have an interest in checking out. That's called Smart Connected Supplier Network. It's one of the most mature data spaces. It's up and running since some years, and they basically enable extended supply chains in the context of manufacturing, and they have also a really user-friendly and SME-friendly approach. So for those that are into manufacturing, that's definitely something to check out. That's to say, this is the perfect time for data spaces to thrive. And I'm really happy to be here. Thanks, Patrick, for the invitation, because I see this participation as a bit the celebration of a new cooperation with the Neutech Park, with the Open Data Hub, and also with other partners here in the area. I spotted our friends from EURAC. Something is already moving, and I'm looking forward to the next weeks and months of cooperation with you.